I threw a surprise backyard barbecue for my wife and her dad. Spent all day on my feet cooking. As I was standing at the grill, I heard my father-in-law say, still trying like a circus dog, huh? My wife snorted, yeah, Dad. He's like a doormat at the front door, you can always wipe your feet. They laughed. I continued to serve the steaks. Later she added, the best thing about him is he doesn't even realize how insignificant he is. I didn't say anything. Just smiled. 3 weeks later, my phone filled with her desperate voice messages. Last Saturday marked 8 years since Olivia and I said our vows. I had been planning something special for weeks. Not flashy or extravagant, just something personal. Something that might remind her of a time when things felt easier between us. She'd been mentioning her dad a lot lately. Not in a dramatic way, more like in passing, with that soft kind of sadness people get when they talk about something they miss but don't expect to have again. Apparently, when she was growing up, they used to host these big family barbecues every summer. Since the pandemic, that tradition disappeared, and I could tell she missed it more than she admitted. So I thought, why not bring it back? I started planning 3 weeks ahead. I made notes. I watched videos. I even called her aunt to ask what kind of smoker her dad used back in the day. I was determined to get everything just right. On the morning of our anniversary, I got up at 6, quietly slid out of bed while Olivia was still asleep, and got to work. First stop, a butcher across town where I'd pre-ordered a couple of high-grade Wagyu ribeyes. They cost me half a paycheck, but I didn't care. Then I drove out to the farmer's market she always loved, the one with the ridiculous parking, just to get the exact heirloom tomatoes she used to obsess over. I even tracked down a bottle of that small batch bourbon her dad, Charles, used to rave about. It wasn't easy, but I found one, wrapped it in a bow, and set it aside for him. As I worked in the backyard, hanging lights, laying out a playlist, prepping the food, I found myself remembering our wedding day. I hadn't thought about it in a long time. I remembered how Charles pulled me aside just before the ceremony. He gave me that hard look of his and said, "You better make sure she gets everything she deserves." I thought it was just something protective dads say, a bit of theater. But now, 8 years later, those words echoed a little differently. By noon, I had everything set. Lights were strung from the pergola I built last summer. The table was set with her favorite blue and white dishes, and the charcuterie board, which I spent far too long arranging thanks to YouTube, looked Instagram-worthy. I even borrowed a fancy smoker from my buddy because Charles once made a joke about my grill skills being a step above microwave. I sent a photo of the setup to my sister, Rachel. She wrote back, "This looks amazing. I hope they actually appreciate it." Yeah, I hope so too. Olivia woke up a little after 1 p.m. and walked into the kitchen in her robe. She stepped outside, saw the backyard, and just stopped. I'll never forget the look on her face. Genuine surprise, maybe even awe. Then came the smile, that warm, real one I hadn't seen in what felt like years. For a few seconds, it was like everything we'd lost was still within reach. She walked over, hugged me tightly, and kissed my cheek. "I can't believe you did all this," she whispered. She was glowing. She immediately pulled out her phone and called her dad. Charles showed up at exactly 3 p.m., wearing his trademark navy blazer and that smug little grin he always wore when visiting our quaint house. And of course, he arrived in his Tesla, the one he never failed to remind everyone was the top-tier model with all the bells and whistles. First, everything was fine. His usual jabs about the size of our backyard. A few passive-aggressive comments about the rustic charm of our patio. I let it roll off my back, like I always did. Olivia showed him around, pointing out the steaks, the fresh salads, the bourbon. I stood at the grill, carefully watching the meat, trying to time everything perfectly. That's when I heard them. They were standing on the side of the house, just out of sight but not out of earshot. I don't think they realized I could hear them from the grill. Charles said with a laugh, still jumping through hoops, "Huh? Like a good little puppy." And Olivia, in a voice I didn't recognize, lighter, higher, almost like she was playing a role, replied, "He's like my safety net. Always there. Always dependable. Like a doormat you never have to replace." They both laughed. I didn't move, didn't blink. The tongs in my hand hung frozen mid-air as the sound of sizzling meat seemed to fade into silence. 8 years. 8 years of trying to earn that man's respect. Of making Olivia's coffee just the way she liked it. Of planning anniversaries, fixing leaks, staying up late helping with her work presentations. Of biting my tongue every time she rolled her eyes when I told a story or looked bored when I talked about my job. All the moments I thought maybe I was just being overly sensitive, maybe it was in my head. But it wasn't. I took a long breath, flipped the steaks and added a little salt. My hands were steady. My heart, not so much. They came back around a few minutes later, both smiling like nothing had happened. Olivia walked up beside me and asked sweetly, "Is the food almost ready?" I looked at her, the woman I'd built a life around. I smiled and said, "Almost there." Dinner went as planned. Charles made a few more jokes about how the steaks weren't as leathery as last time, and Olivia laughed just a little too hard. I excused myself to get more napkins from inside. Once in the kitchen, I gripped the counter until my knuckles went white. I wanted to scream, flip the table, shatter something, ask her how long I'd been the punchline. But instead, I took a deep breath, grabbed the napkins, walked back outside. I kept smiling. The evening dragged on. I played the role, refilling glasses, laughing at Charles's recycled stories, clearing plates like a perfect host. Olivia spilled wine on her dress, and I cleaned it up without a word. But something had shifted. Underneath the calm exterior, something cold was beginning to settle in my chest. And I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The day after the barbecue, I met up with my sister Rachel at a quiet cafe near the river. It's the kind of place with uneven chairs and weird abstract paintings that look like a toddler's temper tantrum, but they make a strong cappuccino and the staff knows her by name. She could tell something was off the second she saw me. I guess I've never been good at hiding things from her. "I need to tell you something," I said, sliding into the booth. Rachel just nodded. "Go ahead." I told her everything. From the barbecue, the things I overheard, the way Olivia laughed, the doormat comment. Rachel didn't interrupt, didn't gasp. She just stirred her coffee slowly like she'd been expecting this. And that more than anything hit me in the gut. "I've been trying to tell you for years," she finally said. "But you always defended her." I didn't argue, because she was right. Then she leaned in and asked, "So what are you going to do?" And without thinking I answered, "I'm going to give her 3 weeks of the perfect husband she thinks she deserves. And then I'm gone. No warning. No goodbye. Just gone." She stared at me wide-eyed. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." That night, back home, I started the process. Quietly. Methodically. I opened a password-protected cloud folder and labeled it Exit. Every night after Olivia fell asleep, I added new pieces to it: screenshots, bank statements, emails, copies of shared documents. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for at first. I just knew I needed to know the full picture before I made my move. What I found was worse than I expected. Over $27,000 had been transferred from our joint savings to an account I'd never seen before. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. Some of it had vague labels, home improvement, wellness, but there were no receipts, no purchases, no trace. I checked her browser history. Apartment listings in Chicago. Searches about remote work options. Emails to a college friend she used to talk to when she was unhappy. One draft stood out, a message to her boss inquiring about relocating to Illinois. "I'd love a fresh start," it read. "Closer to my support system." Support system. I guess that no longer included me. For the next several days, I became an actor in my own life. I made dinner. Her favorites. I offered to help with her upcoming work presentation and stayed up until 2 a.m. formatting slides and adjusting transitions. She was thrilled, kissed me on the cheek, called me amazing. The words didn't land like they used to. I told her I was just happy to help. Meanwhile, I opened a new checking account at a different bank and routed half my paycheck there. Not enough to raise suspicion. Just a slow, quiet shift. On day 6, I scheduled a consultation with a lawyer my friend recommended on Discord. Officially, it was about estate planning. Unofficially, it was about learning what rights I had if I walked away. Turns out I had more than I thought. Our assets were jointly owned, but I had records: every transfer, every unpaid contribution, every line item I'd covered while she was finding herself. I documented it all. Day 8, Charles called. His business IT guy was out of town and he was panicking over some server access issue. "Could I take a look?" "Of course," I said. "Happy to help." I drove over that Saturday morning. His house, as always, smelled like cigar smoke and leather polish. He led me into his home office full of cherry wood and those pretentious hardback books no one ever reads. The issue? A simple permission setting. Fixed it in 10 minutes. But I spent the next 2 hours troubleshooting while exploring his network. I found folders labeled with Olivia's name. Documents. Contracts. Financial records. I copied them all to my drive. Before I left, Charles poured us each a glass of that same bourbon from the barbecue. Sat back, all proud of himself, and started rambling. He told me about his latest investment in a vacation development. Mentioned needing to shift a few assets around. Even joked about how tight the market was. A good time to cut deadweight, he said, then raised his glass. I smiled. I didn't drink it. On day 10, Olivia noticed I'd changed some of the art in our living room, just swapped out a few prints we already owned. She paused for a long moment, then asked, why? I shrugged. Felt like we needed a change. She didn't argue. But that night, I caught her glancing at me when she thought I wasn't looking. Like something was off. On day 12, we had dinner with Lisa, one of Olivia's longtime friends. Lisa was always polite with me but distant. Friendly but filtered. That night, she wasn't. She asked questions. Laughed at my jokes. Olivia kept trying to shift the conversation back to herself. When she got up to go to the restroom, Lisa leaned in. She's been talking about moving, she whispered. To Chicago. She's been talking about it for months. I didn't say anything. Lisa frowned. I just thought you should know. I've tried to stay out of it, but you don't deserve this. I nodded. Thanks for being honest. When we got home, Olivia said she had a headache and went to bed early. I stayed up and added Lisa's comments to a voice memo. The timeline was clear now. The money. The messages. The lies. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. And I wasn't going to wait around for her to finish the job. 3 weeks. That's what I promised myself. 1 week down. 2 to go. Day 15. Olivia's Denver conference was getting closer and I could feel the finish line. I watched her buzz around the house, ironing dresses and double-checking flight details. I smiled, made her coffee, helped zip her suitcase. She kissed me on the cheek and said, I don't know what I'd do without you. I knew exactly what she was planning to do without me. The night before her flight, I cooked her favorite pasta, poured her a glass of wine, and offered a toast to new adventures. She laughed and said, You're being sweet again lately. I miss this version of you. I smiled and said, Me too. What I didn't tell her, everything was ready. My resignation letter was scheduled to send the morning she landed. The small furnished apartment I'd leased across town was waiting for me with the keys taped under the mat. I had moved my documents, backed up all files, and transferred just enough money to keep me afloat without drawing attention. I didn't want revenge. I wanted release. Day 16. I dropped her off at the airport. She hugged me for a long time before heading toward security. Love you, she said over her shoulder. I told her I loved her too. 8 years of habit are hard to shake. Then I watched her walk away, confident, polished, oblivious. As soon as her flight took off, I drove back to the house, pulled into the driveway, and unlocked the door for what I knew would be the last time. I moved fast. I'd planned everything down to the hour. I packed only what I needed: clothes, essentials, my laptop, a few personal keepsakes. Everything else I left behind, including my wedding ring and house key, which I placed gently on the kitchen counter. Beside them, I left an envelope with her name on it. Inside was everything: printouts of her texts with her father mocking me, screenshots of bank transfers, copies of the apartment searches, financial documents showing every dollar I'd contributed and every one she had funneled elsewhere. No accusations. No threats. Just a letter. Calm. Final. I know what I am worth now. That's why I'm leaving. I didn't turn off my phone right away. I wanted to know when she landed. The first voicemail came in 3 hours later. Hey. I just got to the hotel. Where are you? You're not answering your texts. Second message, seriously, Justin, call me. Your stuff's gone. What's happening? Third, is this some kind of joke? That envelope. I don't understand. You went through my private messages? You had no right. I listened to all of them from my new place. The walls were bare, the shower had weak pressure, and the mattress felt like concrete. But for the first time in years, my chest didn't feel tight. She called again. And again. And again. By midnight, she was crying. By 2 a.m., she was yelling. By 4 a.m., she was begging. I turned off the phone. Day 18. I started my new remote job. Orientation over Zoom, welcome emails, HR documents. Everything felt oddly normal. I smiled at new coworkers through a screen, introduced myself as Justin, based in Portland now. I didn't tell them what I'd left behind. Charles emailed me that afternoon. The server issue I'd helped him with was acting up again. He asked if I could take another look, just a quick favor, he wrote. I didn't reply. Later that evening, I got a message from Rachel. She showed up at my apartment. Apparently, Olivia had tracked my sister down. She stood in the rain for 20 minutes, makeup running, shouting my name. Rachel sent me a photo. Olivia was blurry in the background, hands clenched at her sides. The caption read, "Your storm is on my doorstep. Want me to handle it?" I told her to tell Olivia I'd only meet with her in the presence of an attorney. According to Rachel, Olivia broke down crying on the spot and left without another word. Day 21. My attorney sent confirmation the separation notice had been delivered. The terms were fair. More than fair, really. I didn't want to bleed her dry, I just wanted out. She had 10 business days to respond. That same night, I got a text from a new number. I miss you. I was wrong. Please come home. I blocked it. Day 25, I ran into Lisa at a grocery store. We made awkward small talk in the frozen food aisle. She looked concerned, really concerned. Then quietly she said, "She's telling people you had a breakdown. That you disappeared without warning." I sighed. Of course she is. Lisa frowned. Most of our friends aren't buying it. She talked so much trash about you for years, it's weird to hear her suddenly acting like the victim. That evening, I forwarded screenshots of her group chat lies to my attorney. Not to use, just to document. Day 29. Charles called from an unknown number. I answered by instinct. At first, he was calm. Wanted to have a man-to-man. Asked where I was, if we could talk it out. When I didn't give him what he wanted, he shifted fast. His voice got harder. Accusatory. "You're destroying Olivia. She's spiraling. You'll regret this." I let him talk. Then I said, "I have recordings of everything you two ever said about me. Some of them from that afternoon in my own backyard." Silence. Then he hung up. An hour later, I got another message from Olivia. "You're bluffing. You don't have anything." I replied with one audio file, her voice, laughing and calling me pathetic. Then I blocked her again. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I just finally stopped letting them hurt me. Day 32. The silence felt strange at first. After all the noise, the calls, the voicemails, the tears and shouting, nothing felt louder than peace. My new place was still half empty, but I liked it that way. There was no one to judge my cheap curtains or ask why I hadn't hung artwork yet. I had space. I had air. I checked my phone for the first time in 2 days. 17 missed calls. 5 from Charles. A few unknown numbers. 1 from Olivia's office. No voicemails this time. Just digital flailing. I scrolled through the texts and noticed a shift. Less anger. More confusion. Then desperation. "You really left? You're not answering any of my friends. Are you okay? Please just say you're okay. We were going to fix things. I just needed space." That's all it was. But it wasn't space she needed. It was a backup plan. And I had been it for 8 years. Day 35. My attorney confirmed Olivia's lawyer had finally responded. They wanted to negotiate some terms, mostly around the joint assets and the missing funds. I had already provided documentation of everything. Every screenshot. Every bank transfer. Every email. There was nothing to argue. We scheduled a formal meeting. Day 38. Rachel called to tell me Olivia had shown up again, this time in person outside her building, crying and asking for 5 minutes of just us. Rachel didn't let her in. She snapped a photo through the peephole and sent it to me with a caption. "She's still acting like she didn't burn the house down." I thanked her. And I meant it. Day 43. We met in the conference room at my attorney's office. When I walked in, Olivia was already there. She looked smaller. Not physically. Just less sure. Less sharp. Her eyes were puffy, makeup carefully reapplied over the mess. Her first words were, "I never thought you'd actually leave." I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. Her attorney spoke next, clearly coached by Charles. He tried to dispute a few points about asset division, but the moment we presented the financial evidence, he stopped. No more objections. Olivia tried to speak directly to me several times. She said she'd only moved the money in case of emergency. She said the apartment listings were just daydreaming. She said her comments at the barbecue were a joke. She said she never meant to hurt me. I stayed silent except when legally required to respond. I didn't roll my eyes. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flinch. At the end of the meeting, when we were packing up, she asked in a soft voice, "Did the 8 years mean nothing to you?" I paused. Then I looked at her, really looked. And I said, they meant everything. That's why your betrayal cut as deep as it did. And then I left. Day 50. The separation agreement was signed. My attorney said it was one of the smoothest exits she'd seen, all things considered. She told me most people drag it out because they want closure. You? You walked in already done. I was. Done with proving myself. Done with chasing crumbs. Done with being someone's second choice while playing the role of first priority. Charles's business, from what I heard, wasn't doing so well. The server issues I helped fix had exposed some shady accounting. Karma doesn't knock. It just lets itself in. Day 65. I had finally adjusted to the quiet. Fixed the shower pressure. Bought a second-hand couch. Even joined a local pickup basketball league. I hadn't played in years, but I liked the way it made me feel like a person again. Lisa and Rachel became unlikely friends. They started dragging me to trivia nights and weekend brunches. I laughed again. Not out of politeness. Not out of obligation. Genuinely. I laughed. Day 78. The final divorce papers came in. I read every page, signed where needed, and set them aside. 8 years closed with a few strokes of a pen. I didn't cry. I didn't pour a drink. I just took a walk. No headphones. No distractions. Just me. Day 90. I ran into Olivia at a grocery store. Total accident. We both reached for the same basket of oranges and she looked up startled. She looked different. Not bad. Just not the same woman I'd known. The confidence she used to wear like armor was gone. In its place was something closer to resignation. We made awkward small talk about the weather. She said she was moving to Chicago after all. I wished her well. And meant it. As I turned to leave, she said, Justin, wait. I turned back. I'm sorry, she said. Not for what you found, but for who I was. I nodded. Take care of yourself. Then I walked away. Day 100. I was eating dinner with Rachel when she asked, do you regret any of it? I thought about it. No, I said. I regret ignoring the signs. But I don't regret walking away. I don't regret finally seeing it for what it was. She raised her glass. To self-respect. I clinked mine against hers. To freedom. 6 months later, my life is unrecognizable in the best way. I'm dating someone new. Slowly. Carefully. With boundaries I never had before. I don't talk about Olivia often. I don't need to. The past doesn't define me. But it did teach me everything. Then, one day, a package arrived at my door. No return address. Inside was my old house key. And my wedding ring. Alongside them, a single note in Olivia's handwriting. I hope you found what you were looking for. I stared at it for a long time before placing it in a drawer and walking away. Because I had found it. Self-worth. The doormat didn't just walk out the door. He replaced himself with someone stronger. Someone who doesn't wait to be chosen. Someone who chooses himself.